Welcome to Unforbidden Truth. I'm Andrew. Today I'll be speaking with convicted double murderer Dani Holder, formerly known as Daniel Betournay. In 1995, 16-year-old Daniel Betournay, now known as Dani Holder, of College Place, Washington, was sentenced to 63 years and 4 months in prison for the brutal murders of his 14-year-old sister, April, and her best friend, Beth. The girls were tied up and suffocated with plastic bags in December of 1994. A jury found Dani guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, and the sentence he received exceeded the standard range by more than 10 years. Prosecutors had sought an 80-year sentence, emphasizing the need to protect the community, while the court ultimately imposed a lengthy term, ensuring Dani would remain incarcerated for most of his life. Defense attorney William McCool argued for leniency, citing Dani's mental illness, and announced plans to appeal the sentence. The victims expressed anguish and urged that Dani never be released from prison, highlighting the cruelty of the crime and the victim's suffering. The judge presiding over the case noted that few inmates survive 4 decades in prison, referring to the 40-year mandatory minimum as a near-life term, even with potential good behavior reduction. Dani Holder has since been released from prison. Here is my interview with convicted double murderer Dani Holder.
Hello, my name is Dani Holder, formerly Daniel Betournay. I'm 45 years old, serving a 63-year sentence out of Walla Walla County.
Can you recall any positive memories that stick out to you from your childhood?
My childhood was pretty negative, especially past the age of 5, in that I was kind of a transient. I lived in a foster care system. And so the positive stuff that I experienced was kind of, hit and miss. I had a few positive experiences in Boy Scouts, primarily with camping and stuff like that. Not so much at home or anything.
You said your childhood is particularly negative. Can you recall any negative memories that stick out to you from your childhood that you can talk about?
Oh, well, most of my childhood was clouded by secrecy and stuff. I grew up in a conservative Roman Catholic home. It was a foster care system home, and they were extremely judgmental, and I identified as a homosexual, and so everything that I had to do in life was kind of under this umbrella of secrecy. And probably one of the most negative things that ever happened to me was when I got beat up by 3 guys with brass knuckles and couldn't even talk about it with my parents as to why.
And how old were you then?
I think I was I was either 13 or 14. I think I was 13.
And was that because you were gay, or was that because of something else?
Well, that was because of the presumption I was. Nothing had overtly happened to out me, but yeah.
Okay. Did that just happen one time, or did that happen multiple times?
Well, that was the only time it happened with extreme violence. They had picked me up off the floor that time, and it was so bad that they couldn't even identify where I wasn't bleeding from. So it was very unique. It had never happened quite as bad as that before.
Okay. Speaking of physical violence, did you ever suffer any type of childhood abuse or trauma growing up?
Yeah. The reason I was actually taken out of my home initially from my biological home with one of the victims of my crime, and we were taken out together because of negligence and physical abuse. At the time I was 18 months old, and she was only 6 months old.
And that was when you were almost a toddler. You were taken out of the house because of abuse was going on and neglect.
Yeah, I had a very young mom. She was 16 years old, and I had a dad who was slightly older than her, but undereducated and unable to really do much for himself. They were heavily caught up into drugs, unexpected pregnancy. And, so they were kind of irritated by having kids, and there was a lot of neglect and a lot of abuse over noise. They tried to silence us with physical violence, and it was overall hostile. Obviously, I don't have any personal memories of the time, but there's a lot of reports, and I have been able to speak to my biological mom since all this happened.
Okay. Okay. So after you were taken out of the house at 18 months, were you separated from your other sibling, or did you guys remain together?
They actually thought it was the best if we stayed together, and so they kept us together the whole time.
Is that the only sibling that you have or had?
My biological mom had a daughter, and we've had a chance to meet. And then in the foster care system, where I was raised for the majority of my time, was I had an older sister and an older brother.
Oh, okay. That were adopted?
Yeah.
So were you adopted by parents with your biological sister too?
Yeah. Yeah, they kept us together the entire time.
Oh, okay. So what would you say your behavior was like at in the foster care system, and then when you got adopted by a family? Like, what was your behavior like growing up at the time?
Well, my behavior was actually pretty good. I didn't get in any type of disciplinary trouble to speak of. I had a lot of relational distrust with the home that I was living in, and so I did little things at home, but never anything where little mischief stuff at home, but never anything where I got in trouble with like school authorities or legal authorities or anything like that nature.
So the same question, what was your behavior like in school, focusing more on your middle school and 1 year of high school, if you did it in high school before being arrested?
So I was not a good student academically. I was kind of a DNF student. I think that it's fair to say that I was so preoccupied with latent emotions coming out of the adoption and the things that were surrounding why I was taken out of my home, that school was very challenging for me. I wasn't able to concentrate on getting tasks done. So I was a very low-graded student, although my behavior was fine.
So before the crime you committed as a juvenile, did you commit any type of other criminal activities before being arrested for the two cases?
No. This was my first time I ever had a run-in with the law.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about those crimes that you're in prison for now. You're serving 63 years and 4 months for 2 counts of first-degree murder. Is that correct?
When I was 15, yes, that's correct.
Can you walk me through everything that led up to the crimes and what followed after the fact?
Okay, so the build-up for my crime and the reason why it happened on the particular day was that I had been extremely suicidal, actually, and had been, but I had been bouncing back and forth between suicide and running away. Every time that I would fail to commit suicide, I would then attempt to run away. And 2 weeks, for instance, 2 weeks right prior to the crime, I was hospitalized for suicide. They had to pump my stomach and whatnot. And then the night before the crime, I had made a failed runaway attempt. The day of the crime, I had tried to succeed at the runaway attempt that I had failed at the day before. And I had failed the day before because I took one of my buddies with me, and he kind of chickened out a couple hours into our thing. And so my day was really spent trying to figure out a way to steal a car or stay at home in some way without the encumbrance of my family. It's pretty important in my case that I never actually set out to kill anybody. In fact, the first-degree murder aspect of my crime is that during the commission of it, I knew better that something was wrong and I didn't stop. So for me, as I was trying to run away from home and pack and make arrangements to steal the car that belonged to my older sister, the day went on, and my younger sister and a friend of hers ended up arriving home at an unexpected time. They weren't expected to be there. And so I really almost chickened out of everything, but decided to go ahead and tie them up and kind of put them in a place that wouldn't interfere with me stealing the car from my older sister. But after I tied them up, it was very clear that the thing that I did that caused them to die was that I was unable to put tape around their mouths because it kept removing from their hair, and so I had conceived of this stupid idea to put plastic bags there in order to put a surface down for the tape to stick to, and I ended up suffocating. That was the end result. But I had noticed that something was really wrong before they had actually died, and instead of finishing anything or waiting any further, I got scared and just left the house. It was several hours later, after talking to a friend, I had called the police at that time, and then, everything just kind of started unraveling from there.
Okay, so you didn't intend on killing them. You just put the plastic over their heads to make sure they wouldn't talk or scream or anything?
Yeah, I was trying to create a private environment where I could still steal this car with some stealth. They weren't intended at all to be heard at that point. Aside from the fact that, I did strike one of them with a nightstick that I was holding for intimidation purposes. I never hurt any of them, but, other than killing them. I didn't set out to hurt them or any of that kind of thing.
Okay. All right. So you said after this took place, you called the police, a few hours later, and turned yourself in?
Yeah. I had walked around for this. So the crime happened about 4:00 in the afternoon, and I think that I called the police around 10 o'clock that night after wandering around in the fields for those hours, finally stumbling across an area where a friend of mine lived, and I just kind of went into his house and talked to him, and he advised me to call the police and get their assistance instead of asking him for advice.
Okay. All right. So after you were arrested and put on trial, did you actually go to trial, or did you take a plea deal?
No, I went to trial.
Okay. So while you were on trial, what did the court proceedings look like to you from your point of view as a juvenile offender?
I didn't have a clue what was going on. The only thing that I understood kind of was where, I was being bounced around from facility to facility. At that time, Walla Walla didn't have a juvenile facility, so I was housed in Oregon and would transfer to court and then sit there and not have a clue what anyone was saying. I was just basically trying to remain respectful and be present as I was apparently being asked to.
Were you housed with other adult offenders while you were on trial, or were you held with other juveniles?
So I was housed with other juveniles for a minute while I was in Oregon, and then I was housed alone in the adult jail after I'd been remanded to adult court.
So when you were held in the place by yourself, when you were in the adult jail, did you mingle with other inmates during the day or at yard or anything, or did they keep you separated?
No, I was completely separated. They just had a drunk tank that they kept me in, and it had a bench that they put a mattress on, and that was my home for 8 months or so.
So after you were convicted and sentenced to 63 years and 4 months in prison, how did you react emotionally?
Well, initially I couldn't comprehend it. I can very distinctly remember being in IMU and receiving my judgment and sentence and trying to calculate what 760 months translated into, and kept thinking I was doing the math wrong, because in my mind, how do you take a few months and end up with so many years? my math had never been that good, so I wasn't translating into a thing. I didn't have a perspective on what 63 years was. I continued to live in a rather, at first, for many years, I lived in a rather self-destructive manner, not really having any hope, not really having any care about things, and just a very dark place. I was often suicidal and not really ambitious in any kind of way.
So nowadays, how is your relationship with your family?
So, my foster family, my foster dad is dead now. My foster mom and I only recently stopped just talking because I faced parole, and when we get along fine, we weren't going to carry that relationship past the prison. They've been very supportive over the last 30 years, writing letters, talking on the phone, helping support me when I was in need of some material item or whatever. We've been there sharing that time up until very recently when getting out was a possibility.
Okay. Is that because they don't want to, do they not want to be around you if you do get out?
I believe there's a conflict. My oldest brother I don't think he's in support of it. And so, my parents are kind of have been caught in the middle of this, trying to remain neutral with the whole thing with him and be supportive of me. So it seems like overall the message towards me is that it would be easier without having the communication, just so there's not any pull or division in the family.
Okay. All right. That makes somewhat sense. So have you been diagnosed with any mental illnesses?
Yeah, so my primary diagnosis for the longest time was borderline personality disorder. I would say that the most accurate diagnosis that I've had that remains constant is major depressive disorder, which is a pretty good remission.
Do you have remorse for the 2 homicides you committed?
I have. So that's just always one of those questions that is hard to articulate an answer to. And the answer is yes. And yeah, it sounds empty to me to say that I have remorse, but the fact is I grieved for many, many years before I learned how to kind of navigate life again in a way where I felt, worthy of doing anything. It is just because of the remorse, not because of loss or anything like that. Like I said, I think it's always a hollow thing to talk about it, and it always sounds terrible. I think, as the person who has hurt so many people, because the remorse, I will say that, the remorse, the problem is that you've hurt more than one person, right? It isn't just the people that I killed that suffered through all this. There's been so many, and so feeling remorse is such a huge topic that it's difficult to address. But yes, I had dealt with a lot of remorse.
Okay. So if you could talk to your 16-year-old self now, say a week before the homicides took place, what might be your advice?
I have the biggest thing that I have learned that I didn't connect with at that age was that my experiences in life were not unique, and that I did have a place in the world and that I did fit in, and that people could understand me. I just didn't know it then, and that if I would just hang in there a little bit longer, I would discover all of this experientially, that the world isn't as isolated as it felt.
How do you spend your time in prison these days?
Well, that's a lot of stuff. I spent today primarily working on stuff for a Toastmasters group that I'm in, making awards for people and educational track stuff to help people grow in their public speaking abilities. I go to school myself, but I just graduated. a 2-year degree, so I'm just finished that. I work, and I have a hobby. I do embroidery, and then I, socialize. That's about it.
Are you religious in prison?
No, so when I came to prison, I studied religion really fervently, and I think I tried really hard to fit into a religious mold because of my upbringing. In the end, it wasn't something that I was able to adopt and really relate to. I ended up nowadays just kind of living without religion in my life.
Is there anything that you'd like the public to know about yourself or any of these cases for that matter?
Well, if there's one thing that I think is unfortunate as far as the public, in my perception of what they're fed, is that all day long, I'm around people that are generally considered to be really terrible people, and certainly everybody has done terrible things. But the fear-based aspect of trying to get everybody into one category of being all the time dangerous, I think that sometimes the worst crimes create the most sincere change, and that creates really positive people that can benefit society a lot. That would be the biggest thing that I would want to tell people and invite people. I mean, we have all kinds of events going on in here all the time where the public is more than welcome to be involved, to see it for them firsthand, be involved with it.
So if and when you're released into society one day, do you have any plans to what to do with your life and to make sure you don't reoffend?
Well, yeah. So reoffense isn't really something that I ever foresee myself being a part of. I mean, I didn't have a murderous intent coming into prison, and it's not a part of my life other than that I have an awareness of how easily it is to harm people and to cause that damage in other people's lives. I would like, if I'm released, I really want to continue to work with people coming out of prison and re-entering society and deal with people who have been victimized by, sexual assault and things of that nature that I feel have the most vulnerable emotional states that can really be open and be helped.
Before we conclude this interview, is there anything you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
Not particularly. I don't know. I don't have anything in particular. I apologize for going into this if it's been a little awkward. There's a little delay in our our talk, and I'm not a huge phone person, so I appreciate it if a little grace there. But yeah.
That was my interview with convicted double murderer Dani Holder. Thank you for listening.